I was really surprised by how much I liked the original Legend of Zelda. Having just played through the game to completion recently, it's fascinating to go back to the beginning after putting so many hours into Tears of the Kingdom. And while the games couldn't look any more different on the surface, they're surprisingly very similar in concept. If you're not familiar with the development of the game, the original Legend of Zelda was directed by Nintendo Dream Team Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. Developed at the same time as Super Mario Bros., their game would be the debut title for the family computer add-on, the Famicom Disk System, that was only released in Japan. While both are credited as directors, Miyamoto produced the game, while Tezuka wrote the story and script. The game draws a lot of inspiration from Miyamoto's childhood. Growing up in Kyoto, Japan, a city known for its rich history and expensive omiyages, it served as a reference point for the exploration aspect of the game. Of course, we can't forget about Nintendo legend Koji Kondo, who composed the tracks for the game. Originally planning to use Maurice Ravel's Bolero as the title theme, they were forced to change it very late in development because it turned out that piece's copyright had not expired. This in turn caused Kondo to come up with the overworld theme within a day. That's right, one of the most iconic, legendary pieces of music in all of history was thought up in just a day. And speaking of history being made, Zelda was released in February 1986 for the Family Computer Disk System as planned, along with a few other titles. It wouldn't see an American and European release until more than a year and a half later. If you're not familiar, the original Legend of Zelda starts you off as Link with no weapons. Granted, you can get a sword in the first area, but after that, you're on your own. The reason Link doesn't have a weapon is because Miyamoto put forth the idea that while other games at the time would start the hero off with a sword, he wanted the player not to feel spoiled, and wanted them to go out and listen to what the old man had to say. It's a great little trick to get the player more motivated to speak with people since they provide hints and let you know where the secret areas are. But really, there's basically no direction. You get a backstory blurb in the intro of the game before pressing start, along with an item list, which is pretty neat. Can't say I see this too often, but more or less you're left to your own devices. Link can go anywhere on the map right from the beginning. It sounds a little bit like Breath of the Wild, doesn't it? You'll find all sorts of terrain like plains, mountains, forests, and ice caps. The 8-bit graphics can only convey so much, but it makes things easier to map out mentally, and the changes in color and scenery make for good visual markers. Remember the Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time? Well, we got an early version of that here, where you have to follow a specific pattern to get out of this area. Or even climbing the mountain to dungeon level 5, which requires you to go up straight 4 times, so you have to make sure you know where you're going, or else you're gonna have to go all the way around. This open area lends to the scale of the game and sense of adventure, but that also means you're gonna get frustrated when the next area to head to isn't as obvious. And like I mentioned earlier, you're supposed to go around and talk to people because the name of the game is exploration. Finding the old men and women of Hyrule certainly isn't an easy task, and you'll probably need a guide or two to help you on your first playthrough of the game. The main goal of the game is for Link to get 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom. Should he manage to do so, he can use the power to fight the evil Ganon and rescue the captured Princess Zelda. You'll get these from beating each dungeon, and technically because of the game's design, you could go out and get each piece in almost any order you choose. However, it's wise just to go in order because you're going to be getting items in each dungeon that you have to use in subsequent ones. When I started playing, I didn't even realize each dungeon had a special item for me to collect, but once I figured it out, it added another layer to my quest. I made it all the way to the end of the game where you fight Ganon, which is on Death Mountain, and boy was I blown away just by how massive it was. The entire map is a skull, and there are dozens, and like literally dozens of rooms. I had keys to open doors, but I ran out, and then I realized I ignored a hint from an earlier dungeon about a key that has unlimited uses. So naturally, I had to head back, and it served as a reminder always to pay attention to what the old man says. Just running around all over the world burning down random trees to find a secret where you can get money, or making statues come alive to get out of the way of staircases that lead you to secret shops, give off the feeling that the world is just so huge, and that beneath every nook and cranny there's something waiting to be discovered. All the familiar items are here, from rupees, bombs, and arrows, to fairies that will revive all of your hearts. You can even find a great fairy Fawn, which can help a lot when you're running low on health, and replenishing items don't want to spawn for some reason. It always seems like they show up when you never need them. The entire time you're out in the overworld, you'll have the original Zelda theme playing, and I think for any other song I might have gotten sick of hearing it for hours and hours on end, but between this and the dungeon theme, I can't say I was tired of listening to them. I can see why this song has persevered over the years to reach the legendary status that it has. It's just so good and it's so catchy. Don't forget about the second quest too, which is insanely difficult. Even with the first dungeon, I was stumped. So if you're a true master of Zelda, yeah, give it a shot. But if you're a beginner, Well, I say the main game is hard enough, and while it starts off a little bit easy, by level 4 or 5, you're gonna start feeling the burn. At the end, you better be well equipped because enemies will take tons of damage off you and you'll be spinning around one too many times. Of course, the Nintendo Switch Online app where I played the game allows rewind, but if you're in a bad position, it's really not going to help you anyway. So you might as well start over, or just save state at a really good spot with all your health and items and all that. The Legend of Zelda as a series has moved on from where it started and evolved so much over the years. We've had 35 anniversaries after all. But when you play the newer titles and then go back to this one, it's nice to see the through line that exists in the series. And it's nice to just see where everything began. When Zelda was released in both Japan and the West, it became a huge hit. It sold 1 million copies in Japan on its very first day of release, going on to sell 1.69 million copies for the Famicom disk system alone. In the US, it sold more than 3 million and would go on to sell over 6 million copies worldwide. The gaming landscape is in a much different space now, and because of that, a game where you sink hours into just exploring with no clear, immediate indications of what to do next might put some people off. Along with the graphics, of course. But if you could look past that, and heck, even consult a guide when you need to, you'll find a classic title that still holds up even today. I recommend any Zelda fan play it, no questions asked. After all, it's the original Hyrule Fantasy.